Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to work on our straight darts. And this is the pattern. And there are a couple things to be aware of the pattern. I have up here a set of notches, and then just under that is a set of punch holes. So these notches are very important. If you'll notice when you look at your pattern, they're slightly askew. And that is because these notches are angled in the direction that you should be sewing the darts. So these punch holes also indicate an area where you're going to be stopping. You're going to stop sewing at the point about a ½ inch past this drill hole. This drill hole is in the center of this dart. So what's going to happen is once we clip these notches, we'll fold the fabric in half, matching each of these notches, folded in half, lined up with that drill hole, and then we'll sew in this direction that the notch is going toward this drill hole and ending about a ½ inch past this drill hole. So that will better be explained after we cut it out. So we first need to punch our notches and our drill hole. So I'm going to use my notcher, and I'm going to be very careful that I actually notch in that direction that the notches have been indicated. And then I'm going to use my awl, and I'm just going to punch holes. Now, this hole should be big enough for you to get some sort of marking tool in there. You can punch all the way through the fabric, but remember that if you do that, you need to make sure that your sewing sews around that punch hole. All right, so I'm going to actually cut this out of the fabric, and I'm just going to need to cut one, and I'm going to practice doing 3 darts. So I'm going to quickly cut this out of the fabric, and then I'll be right back to actually discuss the actual sewing and stitching of the darts. Okay, so now that I have the fabric cut out and I have everything notched, clipped, and I have a point here. Let's look at this one. This is the drill hole for where to stop. Now, I want to give you a preview of what they will end up looking like. So this is what the actual finished sample will look like. And you can see that I have a stitching line. You can see that I have the notches here. I've matched the notches, and then I don't have the drill hole that we can see it's been pressed out. But you see that there's almost a straight line. There should be a straight line sewing down here, which creates this little half triangle. And your darts, the whole dart is a full triangle. And let me see if I can help you visualize this. Now I said that we're going to be matching the notches, and that the drill hole here is the center of the fold. This would be the fold line. So if I'm folding this over to match these notches, match the notches, then that drill hole, when I fold the fabric, that's going to be the center. And then if I lay this down this way, the idea is if I'm going to stop a ½ inch below where this drill hole is, I can mark it. We wouldn't normally do this in the industry. Sewers in the industry aren't going to mark it. They're just going to know by eye where to stop. But for beginners, we can actually draw a stitch line if we'd like. All right, so if you understand now, the stitch line will go from here, where your notch is, sewing right down and ending at the bottom. Now at the bottom, I don't like to backstitch because that creates bulk. And if I have a couple of backstitches here on the edge, what happens is that we get a little buckling. Let me see if I can hold this and then fold this over so you can kind of see what might happen. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it will create a little bubble, and we don't want that on the outside. So I will stitch all the way down a 1/2 inch below this, and then maybe right on the very edge, and hopefully I'll be able to show that in the machine, just a couple stitches beyond that so that it ends it. And what that does is it gives a couple of extra stitches beyond the drill hole, so in case that thread pulls out, right? We don't want the dart to unravel. So I'm going to unfold this again, and I have the one dart leg, but if I want to show you also the center of this dart, if you can see that. If you can't see it, go ahead and draw it on your fabric, so at least the first one you understand what you're going to be sewing. Now, depending on which side you sew on, this side in the machine or this side in the machine, it doesn't really matter. What we're hoping to do is get three nice perfect triangles, which actually creates a shape. The other thing that you should be aware of is that the darts themselves, the excess dart fabric is going to be on the inside of the garment, and so we get a nice seam on the outside of the garment. See, I have my lines here on the outside of the garment, and this is the wrong side of the garment. So we want to make sure that we do that as well. So right now I'm going to do that with my pen. Mark my lines. That is now the face side, and this will be the inside. So let's go over to the machine and see how these will be sewn. All right, so we're ready to sew the dart, and remember we've outlined our first one as a guide. So we're going to fold this in half. Remember, the center is where our dotted line is, and we've marked where we're going to actually stop. Remember that the drill hole above that is an indicator that we need to get ready to stop. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this. Remember that we're matching the notches, and again, this is face side to face side. So we have our sew line here, and we're going to stop down here, and then what's going to happen is we'll actually just take it out. We're not going to cut any of the threads. Now, before I start, I haven't pinned this. If you want to pin, there are a couple ways you could pin. You can pin perpendicular like that, but be aware that you might, depending on the type of fabric you have, you may put a hole in the fabric because this pin extends past our sew line. So a lot of times what I like to do if I need to pin the dart is I'll pin just next to the stitch line on the inside of the dart excess. So that's how I would pin it. So I'll go ahead and leave that in there for now, but I'm not going to pin the rest of it. This is a pretty short dart, so I'm not going to worry about it. So we're going to put this in the machine just like normal, and I'm going to start up here at the top of the dart, and I'm going to backstitch. Remember, you're following this line, so your fabric is going to be slightly angled because that's the angle of your stitch line, and we'll just be following that all the way down. Now, when you get close to your finish point, you'll want to kind of adjust your stitching and the angle of your fabric to get your needle to be right on the edge of the fabric. And we're not going to backstitch. So I stopped a little bit short. I'm going to take this out. Now when you take it out of the machine, you want to leave a length of thread. So I'm going to clip this here. And I'm going to open this up. Actually, first, before I want to show you, I'm going to get this closer and see if I can focus here. So here, I'm a ways away from that edge, although I've stopped pretty close to where my stopping point was. So I'm going to open this up and let's see what it looks like. So this is the end of that, and you can see that it's actually at a pretty good spot. There is a slight pucker right here. If we do another one, we want to get a little bit closer to that edge. Now, what do we do with the rest of this thread? Well, there are a couple things you could do. You could just leave it, which a lot of sewers will leave it. You could take and tie a knot in it with the whole thing. I'm not going to tie it all the way, right? Just take that thread and then tie a knot so it doesn't pull out. Or you could tie a square knot where you separate these like shoelaces, tie it in a knot like you would a shoelace. So my preferred method is to take this and to knot the whole thing, but let me see if I can get this in the camera view. So I'm going to wrap this around and tie a knot, get that thread out. But I don't want to tighten it close to this. So I'm just going to hold that maybe about a 1/4 inch away, and then I will tighten that knot up. Okay? So my knot is actually right here, and then I would clip off this extra. And that's okay, because what we don't want to happen is if the stitches come out and then your dart goes away. If you leave it like this, if the stitches somehow come out, you still have the thread there. This is really not going to come out. The thread would actually have to come all the way out on both sides for it to actually start fraying away. Okay, so there's our first dart, and I'm just going to clip this other end here. So we got to work on this second and third dart. Now for the second one, I'm going to do the same thing, but I don't have any markings. I'm just going to use my eye. Now remember that this punch hole is a 1/2 inch before we need to stop. And I'm going to match my 2 notches. So fold it with the face side. Up here, match your notches. And then this dot, remember, your drill hole is the center of that, so it should match right up to that. Now when you put this in the machine, you'll have to imagine a line from the notch going straight down just past this drill hole about a 1/2 inch, right? And if I can show you that, so if I put a pin, if I'm going to say that's my 1/2 inch past the drill hole, then I know that's about my stopping point. So I'm just going to grab my notch, make sure that my notches are matching. I'm going to stick this in to the machine. I like to put my needle down first. And then with my eye, if this is the stopping point, I can lift up the presser foot and I can angle the fabric so I can see the needle going straight to that point. And that's all I really need to do. And then I'm going to start sewing by back stitching. And now it's just a straight shot to my pin down here. So I'll sew. And then once I get close, I'm going to need to remove this pin. And I can kind of see where it was, so I'll need to sometimes you'll have to readjust the angle of your fabric. I'm going to do one more stitch right there on the edge. Pull that needle all the way up. Go ahead and pull this out. And again, here I am right on the edge. I'm going to leave that length a little bit, maybe 2 inches. Let's have a look at this close up. Okay, I did pretty well. And then what does it look like on the outside? Whoops. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to actually tie this. Okay, so I have 2 of those Done. And I did both of these the same way. I'm going to show you another way. You don't always have to start here at the top of where the widest part of the dart is. Especially, I like doing this, especially if I'm doing custom work, to make sure that all of the ends of my darts are ending at the same place. I will actually start at the dart tip where I'm supposed to stop. So I'll start here and then sew all the way up. So you're still folding at the notches, match the notches, and that drill hole is your center. But in this case, if I mark the 1/2 inch, right, that's where I'll start. And then I will sew up to the notches. Now, the nice thing about the difficult thing with this is that you have to put the needle right here at the fold, right in there to get it to start. We're not backstitching here. Backstitching creates a lot of bulk at those points, and so we don't want to backstitch at the dart point. So I'm going to put this in here, and I got to remove this pin. So I got to line this up in the machine, that 1/2 inch past that drill, and then I'm going to put my needle down, and you can see it. You probably can't see it in the machine. You know what? I'm going to stop here just so you can see where I'm putting the needle. I'm going to take this foot off so you can see where the needle is, because I'm not sure. Can you see that? So I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to take the foot off just so you can kind of see where that needle is. Okay, so this is exactly where the needle is, and I'm kind of holding the camera. Sorry, it's moving around. So if that shows you how close I am, I'm just grabbing maybe 1 or 2 of the yarns in the weave. So that's where your needle should really be when you're at the end of the dart, on the dart point. All right, so I'm going to put I'll put the foot back on, and then we'll begin to sew this. So I just wanted to show you where your needle should be. Okay, so now when we start this, we want to take 1 or 2 stitches right on that edge that you just saw. So I'm going to go really slow. And then I will angle that fabric right up to this notch here. That notch that we found, that we made. Straight up to this notch, and I'm going to get ready to backstitch at the end. So we'll backstitch here, and then I'll take this out. Good. Now, when we look at this edge, it looks just like the other ones. We're stitching right on this edge here. I've avoided the drill hole, and I've stitched up and backstitched. I don't have a backstitch here. And again, I'm going to tie the knot. And clip the excess. All right, so there are our 3 darts. 2 I did the same way, and the last one I started at the end point and sewed up. Okay, so we will need to press these, and I will discuss how to press your darts at the pressing mat. Okay, so when you're pressing your darts, the first thing you want to do is kind of fold them flat and press them flat. And then that will set the stitches in. And then what you'll want to do is decide on a direction. And the dart end should actually tell you which way they should be folded. For this pattern, you can fold them any way. So I'm folding them all over to one side. Now only press as long as the dart is. Don't press past that, because you want to be able to press the area below that flat. So just take the iron and press into that point a little bit from the bottom. You don't need a pressing ham. You just kind of shape the fabric and then press up into the dart tip, and then you can kind of flatten the dart on the top, on the face side of the fabric.